Prince Harry and King to speak again next week after Turning Point phone call. A notable shift in tone has taken place after the Duke of Sussex offered an olive branch to his father on his 75th birthday. The King and Prince Harry will speak again next week after a phone call for the monarch's 75th birthday marked a turning point in their relationship. Father and son enjoyed a warm conversation on Tuesday after the Duke of Sussex called his father to wish him a happy birthday. After a lengthy spell during which the two have barely spoken, the chat marked a notable shift in tone. The King also spoke on the phone with Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. Prince Archie, 4, and Princess Lilibet, 2, are understood to have recorded a video of themselves singing happy birthday to their grandfather, who they have only met on a handful of occasions, but which would have delighted him. The fact that both sides have signaled a desire to bury the hatchet and start to mend their relationship was hailed a positive sign that was celebrated on both sides of the Atlantic. As the King joined close friends for a birthday dinner at Clarence House on Tuesday night, he will undoubtedly have felt a weight lifted from his shoulders. The development comes as the death of Diana, Princess of Wales, and its devastating aftermath is laid bare in the new series of The Crown, released on Thursday. The first part of the final series thrusts the King and his sons into the spotlight as it examines the late princess's movements in her final weeks, dramatizing both Prince William and Prince Harry's cherished final interactions with their mother. The Duke made clear in various interviews surrounding the publication of his memoir, Spare, in January, that he wanted to reconcile with his father. He wrote warmly of his relationship with his pa, and later said in a television interview that he would always love him. However, he insisted that he wanted an apology from his family before he could move on, insisting that the ball is in their court. His position is thought to have baffled and angered senior members of the royal family in equal measure, many of whom felt deeply betrayed by the personal revelations he had made. Harry had hoped that by laying all of his cards on the table and laying bare his pain, he might jolt his family into contacting him and apologizing for the perceived neglect. But such an apology never came. While the emotional distance from his son was said to cause him great pain, the King, who has never relished confrontation, chose instead to park the issue while he concentrated on matters of state. In an apparent retaliation for the barbs flying from California, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex were asked to vacate their UK home, Frogmore Cottage, just as Prince Harry's damning memoir was released. But the King was said to have been genuinely thrilled that his younger son flew over from California for his coronation in May. The pair had held peace talks before Prince Harry confirmed his plans to attend the ceremony, and the positive conversations were interpreted at the time as a significant step towards reconciliation. But since then, there had been little movement. Although the Duke made a subsequent visit to London in September, their respective diaries and work commitments meant the two were unable to meet up. There seemed to have been little improvement come Prince Harry's 39th birthday in mid-September, when relations were so strained that he did not hear from his father or his brother. Then, in recent days, the Duke's office felt obliged to put out a formal correction after reports wrongly suggested he had been invited to the King's birthday dinner at Clarence House. In fact, they said there had been no contact regarding an invitation to His Majesty's birthday celebration, which was largely for close friends. The apparent dispute was considered by some to be a sign of the deep resentment between the two sides, but simply reflected a desire to correct the record. Those on both sides hoped that instead, Prince Harry's olive branch on the king's birthday marked a genuine turning point, offering an opportunity for both father and son to move forwards. I am coming out of retirement to write this review. I've never had more than a passing curiosity about the Queen of England or her family. In fact, I was deep into my adolescence before I even knew about Prince William and Prince Harry, and it never occurred to me that perhaps the Queen's husband might have still been alive at the time of my discovery. Even now, it's very much ado about nothing for me. Even with all the controversy of the last decade involving the two sons and their respective spouses, I never cared about any of more than a simple, "Oh well, I guess it's interesting." That's the issue with having one's whole life on display. It's a spectacle for the unimaginative. I'd rather capture my musings in the pages of a book rather than magazines. All that aside, I'm not a fan of institution. They breed corruption. That isn't just a criticism of monarchy, but rather an overarching one of all institutions: education, media, businesses, churches, hospitals, etc. The problem at the end of the day is simple: greed. You just can't trust people with any sort of power. I've been in a leadership position. No sane person who values life stays in power long. There are more important endeavors after all. Love, for example. I do not typically read autobiographies or nonfiction. In fact, I purposefully shy away from this sort of thing. Who wants to waste time on some pompous self-indulgence? Not me. Maybe I'm too judgmental. In any case, I succumbed to my basic inquisitive nature, spurred on by my recent viewing of Queen Charlotte on Netflix. Haha, I know. And I've been seeing Harry's book everywhere. Was it subliminal? Alas, it often happens that I jumped onto the bandwagon last minute, and find myself admonishing my stubborn refusal to conform with the masses. There's a reason popular things are popular. I saw it sitting on a shelf at work. I flipped to the end. It is a sacred practice of mine. I love to know how things end before I start them. Is it worth the journey? I happened upon some lines where Harry's reminiscing about his granny. I felt my eyes start to sting with hot tears right there in the aisle at work. You see, I lost my grandmother this year. Someone who was pivotal to my life gone. His words hit me in a place I now avoid. They resonated with me. They suddenly made this prince human to me. I decided to read the whole damn thing, so I did. I also read the commentary on it as well. People are so funny in what they focus on. It has to be a matter of perspective. So many people were caught up in the tell-all of this book. Is it a tell-all? It didn't read that way to me. In fact, it seemed overwhelmingly focused on grief. Harry's lost a good many people, some to tragic ends and some to perhaps the worst fate, plain old pride. That, too, hit me square in the chest. Anyone who's been hurt by family knows how keenly the disappointment in them burns you when, despite your better judgment, you were willing to put your faith into them until the end, and they proved the faith misplaced again and again. Is it really too much to expect the people you care for would also care for you in the same way? If only you could understand one another. I don't care about the press or the royal family. I don't even care how much people may think this is all true or not true. What I think is true, what leapt out of each page at me over and over, is the grief laced into the heart of Harry. It's a familiar grief to my own. It's a grief that has taken on many forms throughout my life, but started young. It's not exactly comfort I felt while reading this, though the words did seem to pass effortlessly before my eyes. Maybe a little less lonely for knowing that despite everything, he's managing to forge ahead. I can too. There's truth in loss. You see the reality of people. They either become the absolute scum of the earth, or they fill your heart with such unspeakable joy. It makes me think of when I became hyper-fixated on September 11th and learned about the evacuation of NYC, which became the largest boat evacuation since Dunkirk. a fact I think Harry would find interesting to know. I watched this documentary about it and cried at how many people showed up to rescue those people. The largest evacuation in history. 500,000 people all in 9 hours. See, people have such capacity for compassion. That's what I sometimes think about when the pessimism strikes. This book will be a reminder now too. At the end of it, Harry's point wasn't just to tell the world his side of things, it was more pointed than that. The prologue starts with his dad and brother saying they don't know how it's come to this. Harry's incredulous. I would have been too. After all, are they just being inconsiderate, or are they like Daisy Buchanan in The Great Gatsby, willfully naive of the world around them, caught in their vacuum of selfishness, unwilling to face the truth because of the fear that life as they know it may shatter? I'm inclined to agree with this classification, which would make Harry equitable to Nick Carraway. The entire book proof of his evolving disillusionment with that same life. Whereas Gatsby ends in a death, Harry's story starts with one. It seems important to note this. As I said, loss leads to truth. Sometimes it's a harsh and bitter truth, but necessary. I hope that Harry's truth meets its mark in the hearts of those who he still, somehow, hasn't given up hope on, his dad and his brother. My advice if you decide to read this? Don't dwell on what you perceive to be TMI, but rather the why of it all. Why? He had the courage to break away from the mold of 1,000 years of conformity, in spite his sworn enemy the press, the threats, and perhaps even his own self-doubt, and share what's been forming for decades. The culmination of his experience open to public scrutiny. At the end of the day, I don't care for institutions. When you forget that people in power are just that, people human, you forget that not only are they too worthy of compassion, but also shouldn't be idolized. Humans make mistakes, but it's important to learn from them. I could understand from reading this just how much work Harry's done in learning from his. From one human to another, Harry, if you ever read this, I genuinely hope that your words do not fall onto deaf ears. Thank you for the tears I cried while reading this, and thanks for sharing.